He wants to shut down the country. We just went through it. We had to because we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly people with heart problems and diabetes and different problems are very, very vulnerable. We learned a lot. Young children aren't. Even younger people aren't. We've learned a lot. But he wants to shut it down. More people will be hurt by continuing. If you look at Pennsylvania, if you look at certain states that have been shut down, they have Democrat governors all. One of the reasons they're shut down is because they want to keep it shut down until after the election on November 3rd.
I want to move on to another subject. I want to move on to another subject.
But those states are not doing well that are shut down right now.
Respond to that.
President Trump, you have begun to increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer. And in fact, recently you have cited the issue of waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning
the efficacy of masks? You have to understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to. But I wear masks when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. I will say this.
Vice President Biden, go ahead, sir.
Look, the way to open businesses is give them the wherewithal to be able to open. We provided money.
But I was asking you, sir, about masks.
Well, masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, everybody wore masks in social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
And they've also said the opposite. They've also said
no serious person said the opposite.
Look at Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci said the opposite.
He did not say the opposite.
I want to ask you, we got a little bit more than a minute left in this segment.
Masks are not good. Then he changed his mind. He said masks good. I'm okay with masks.
I want to ask you both about one last subject, because your different approaches has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed together, thousands of people. Outside, yes, sir, agreed. Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with...
Because nobody will show up.
People with...
Well, it's true. Nobody shows up to his rallies.
All right. In any case, why you holding the big rallies? Why you not? You go first, sir.
Because people want to hear what I have to say. I mean,
but are you not worried about it spreading disease?
President, and I'll have 35,000 people show up at airports. We use airports.
Are you not worried about the disease issues, sir?
Well, so far, we have had no problem whatsoever. It's outside. That's a big difference, according to the experts. And we do them outside. We have tremendous crowds, as you see. I mean, and literally on 24 hours notice. And Joe does the circles and has 3 people someplace.
Okay. By the way, did you see one of the last big rallies he had? And a reporter came up to him to ask him a question. He said, no, stand back. Put on your mask. Put on a mask. Have you been tested? I'm way far away from those other people. That's what he said. I can't. I'm going to be okay. He's not worried about you. He's not worried about the people out there breathing in one another.
We've had no negative effect.
No negative effect.
We've had no negative effect. And we've had 35,000, 40,000 people at these rallies.
Just quickly finish up, because I want to move on to our next.
Yes, I would. He's been totally irresponsible the way in which he has handled the social distancing and people wearing masks, basically encourage them not to.
All right.
Ben, he's a fool on this.
If you could get the crowds, you would have done the same thing. But you can't. Nobody cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the economy?
Yes.
The economy is, I think it's fair to say, recovering faster than expected from the shutdown.
Much faster.
In the second quarter. The unemployment rate fell to 8.4% last month. The Federal Reserve says the hit to growth, which is going to be there, is not going to be nearly as big as they had expected. President Trump, you say we are in a V-shaped recovery. Vice President Biden, you say it's more of a K-shape. What difference does that mean to the American people in terms of the economy? President Trump, in this segment, you go first.
So we built the greatest economy in history. We closed it down because of the China plague. When the plague came in, we closed it down, which was very hard psychologically to do. He didn't think we should close it down, and he was wrong. And again, 2 million people would be dead now instead of still 204,000 people is too much. One person is too much. Should have never happened from China. But what happened is we closed it down, and now we're reopening, and we're doing record business. We had 10.4 million people in a 4-month period that we've put back into the workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. And he wants to close down he will shut it down again. He will destroy this country. You know, a lot of people, between drugs and alcohol and depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening at some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week. You saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed. They're hurting people. People know what to do. They can social distance. They can wash their hands. They can wear masks. They can do whatever they want. But they got to open these states up. When you look at North Carolina, and these governors are under siege, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and a couple of others, you got to open these states up. It's not fair. You're talking about almost it's like being in prison. And you look at what's going on with divorce. Look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's a very, very sad thing. And he'll close down the whole country. This guy will close down the whole country and destroy our country. Our country is coming back incredibly well, setting records as it does it. We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down. Michigan.
All right. Your 2 minutes, sir. We're now moved to you. As I said, posing the question, the president says it's a V-shaped recovery. You say it's a K-shaped recovery. What's the difference?
The difference is millionaires and billionaires like him in the middle of the COVID crisis have done very well. Billionaires have made another $300 billion because of his profligate tax proposal, and he only focused on the market. But you folks at home, you folks living in Scranton and Claymont and all the small towns and working class towns in America, how well are you doing? This guy paid a total of $750 in taxes.
Sir, wait, no, sir, it's his wrong state. Yeah, I understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes, so please let him have it.
Do I get my time back? The fact is that he has, in fact, worked on this in a way that he's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his administration than when he became president. Fewer jobs than when he became president. First one in American history. Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines, those people who have been saving our lives, those people who have been out there dying, people who have been putting themselves in the way to make sure that we could all try to make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up more. Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools. Why aren't schools open? Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely. You know, they were going to give, his administration was going to give the teachers and school students masks. And then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
All right. Your time is up, sir. Well, we are going to get to...
I have to respond to that.
Well, you both had 2 minutes, sir.
Excuse me, he made a statement.
So did you.
People want their schools open. They don't want to be shut down. They don't want their state shut down. They want their restaurants. I look at New York. It's so sad what's happening in New York. It's almost like a ghost town. And I'm not sure it can ever recover what they've done in New York. People want their places open. They want to get back to their lives. They'll be careful, but they want their schools open.
Okay.
I'm the one that brought back football. By the way, I brought back Big Ten football. It was me, and I'm very happy to do it. And
all right,
people of Ohio are very proud of me. And you know how I found out? When you took
gentlemen,
the phony
we're going to
ad.
get to your economic plans going forward in a moment. But first, Mr. President, as you well know, there's a new report that in 2016, the year you were elected president, and 2017, your first year as president, that you paid $750 a year in federal income tax each of those years. I know that you pay a lot of other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you paid $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, There was a story in one of the papers.
Show us your tax
I paid
returns.
$38 million 1 year. I paid $27 million.
Show us your tax
1 year.
returns.
I went. You'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you want to go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under-leveraged because the assets are extremely good, and I built
Sir,
a great
I'm asking
company.
you a specific question, which
But
is...
let me tell you.
I understand all of that.
Release your
I
tax
understand all of that.
return.
No, Mr. President,
Go ahead.
I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars.
So
yes.
not 750?
Millions of dollars, and you'll get to see it. And you'll get to see
when?
it. But let me just tell you, Chris, let me just tell you something, that it was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business people. Like every other private person, unless they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is. He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for tax credits. We build a building and we get tax credits, like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which, by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now, the man got fired right after that happened. But
Vice President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond. Look, the tax code that made him, put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher makes, on the money a school teacher makes, is because of him he says he's smart because he can take advantage of the tax code. And he does take advantage of the tax code. That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And I'm going to eliminate those tax cuts and make sure that we invest in the people who, in fact, need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because you weren't president. Because you weren't president screwing things up.
You were a senator. And
You're the worst president America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let me just tell you, Joe. I've done more in 47 months. I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe. We've done things that you never even thought of doing, including fixing the broken military that you gave me, including taking care of your vets.
Mr. President, we're talking about the economy. I'd like to ask you about your plans going forward, because, Mr. Vice President, your economic plan, if you were to be elected president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes. You propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what is the analysis done by Wall Street firms. Points out that my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth, because it would be about buying American. That we're going to make the federal government spend $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company.
But respectfully, sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
By the way, I'm going to eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies, in the Fortune 500 who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars.
Why didn't you do it before when you were vice president with Obama?
Because you, in fact, passed that. That was your tax proposal.
I got it done. And you know what happened?
Yeah, you got it done.
Our economy boomed like it's never boomed.
The economy is busted. Let me finish.
Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
Not lower taxes for the American people.
Excuse me.
But in Obama's, you talk about the economy booming, it turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery since economic recovery since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks. if you got in, if you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty of companies that are already here, they'll leave for other places. They will leave, and you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Look, we inherited the worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
It wasn't booming.
He blew it.
It wasn't booming. It was the weakest recovery since 1929.
Is it fair to say he blew it when, in fact, when there was record low unemployment before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole. Manufacturing went in the hole.
Excuse me, Chris. Wait.
Number two.
Chris.
Number three.
They said it would take. No, you were number two.
No.
Chris. They said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing. Part of my standard fare.
I'm the guy that brought back the automobile industry.
All right, let him.
We brought back. I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're going.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
That is not
Many
true.
Car companies came in from Germany, from Japan, went to Michigan, went to Ohio.
They're not having.
And they didn't come in with you.
Mr. Vice President, go ahead.
And so you take a look at what he's actually done. He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit with Mexico.
China ate your lunch, down 18%. China ate your lunch, Joe, and no wonder your son goes in and he takes out billions of dollars. Takes out billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also, while we're at it, why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it? What did he do with Burisma to deserve $183,000?
You've asked your question, let him answer.
None of that is true.
Oh, really? He didn't get $3.5 million?
Mr. President,
Mr.
President, please.
Totally discredited. Totally discredited. And by the way,
well, wait, he didn't get $3.5 million, Joe?
Mr. Vice,
he got $3.5 million.
It is not true.
Oh, really?
Mr. President, it's an open discussion, please.
Now, it's a fact.
Well, you have raised an issue. Let the Vice President answer.
Discredited.
Did Burisma pay him $183,000 a month? With no experience in energy?
Mr. President,
my son did nothing wrong at Burisma.
I think he did.
Mr. President, let him answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. His position has been totally, thoroughly discredited.
By who?
And
the media?
By everybody. Well, by the media, by our allies, by the World Bank, by everyone has discredited. Matter of fact, even the people who testified under oth.
So let me ask you this.
No, go ahead, Mr. I'm listening to you.
He
got $3.5 million from Moscow.
He testified under oath in his administration, said, I did my job and I did it very well.
Oh, really?
I did it
I'd
honorably.
like to know who they are.
Well, I'll give you the list of the people who testified.
No, go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't do a good job. With you,
go ahead. Wait a minute. You get the final word, Mr.
Well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me.
Hey, let me just say, Joe.
No. I'm Mr. President.
$3.5 million, Joe.
That is simply.
Why did he deserve $3.5 million from Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about families and ethics. I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's already...
My family lost a fortune by coming down and helping us with government.
And that's such a...
Mr. President.
Every single one of them lost a fortune.
This is not about my family or his family. It's about your family. The American people. He doesn't... That's not true. It doesn't want to talk about what you need. You, the American people. It's about you. That's what we're talking about here.
All right. That's the end of the segment. We're moving on.
He didn't take them.
Vice President, no.
Can I be honest? It's a very important question.
Try to be honest.
He stood up.
No, the answer to the question is no.
Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion, if you
that is absolutely not true.
You're doing it.
You're going to have
true,
gentlemen. I hate to raise my voice, but it seems to be. Why shouldn't I be different than the two of you? So here's the deal.
Good point.
We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr. President, you can say anything you want. I'm going to ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead. But I think that the country would be better served if we allowed both people to speak with fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
Well, and him too.
Well, frankly, you've been doing more interrupting
Well, that's
than he
all right,
has.
but he does plenty.
Well, less than, sir, less
there's
than
plenty.
No, less than you have. Let's please continue on. The issue of race. Vice President Biden, you say that President Trump's response to the violence in Charlottesville 3 years ago, when he talked about very fine people on both sides, was what directly led you to launch this run for president.
Oh, yeah, sure.
President Trump, you have often said that you believe you have done more for black Americans than any president, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. My question for the 2 of you is, why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity and equality. It's about decency. It's about the Constitution. And we have never walked away from trying to
have often said
equity for everyone, equality for the whole of America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president has ever said anything like that.
It is who's
now, second,
sir.
Second point I'd make to you is that when Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do? He came out of his bunker, had the military use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible. And then what happened after that? The bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is a savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man's done virtually nothing. Look, the fact is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did. And what he did has been disastrous for the African-American community.
So,
President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with racism?
He did a crime bill, 1994, where you call them super predators, African Americans, the super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the 1990, and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time, because they saw what you did.
Curious what your position on all this was.
Super predators, and you've called them worse than that, because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals, total support.
Yeah.
Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day and they put up their hands and we got back back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases radical left. And they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide, you said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country? Yes,
there is. There's systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples. And when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable.
Well, I just meant on which side of this dumbassery do you stand?
Together, an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers.
So you're pro-Trump.
And we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it. But we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
What is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of the town,
which I can understand,
burn down your stores and kill people all over the place.
That is peaceful protest.
President Trump, I'm not asking, but you say it is.
President Trump, I'd like to.
Oh, see, and I've got veteran friends that were fucked by him.
In a moment. This month,
he removed a lot of healthcare policies. I had friends with pre-existing conditions that they were set up for medical for life that lost their medical. One of my friends, Ashley, was a paratrooper. He fucked his spine on a bad jump, and he just lost all of his medical because of some policy changes to whatever Trump did.
Because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place.
Yeah, I'd have to ask him.
In our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else. And he would know.
What is radical about racial sensitivity training?
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we were paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas and, frankly, very sick ideas.
Oh, he's been...
And really, they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen.
I mean, he's old school military, though. Like, he's 20, 30 years of that at this point.
That our country is a horrible place.
So he's been on medical. Like, granted, he's been fighting the VA fucking forever because the VA's swamped.
Nobody's doing that. He's racist.
You just don't know.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about this.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other
I'll have to
people
ask
feel
him.
like. What
Yeah, it's always weird. Like, I try not to talk about it with Tony's group because you guys seem pretty far on that side.
People don't want to hurt other people's feelings.
I'm right in the middle. I don't like any of them.
It makes a gigantic difference.
There's good and there's bad policies.
Able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people.
Oh, yeah, I was right there with you.
Look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together. We can take this on and we can defeat racism in America.
President Trump, sir.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was tremendous division. There was hatred. You look at Ferguson, you look at You go to many places. Look at Oakland. Look what happened in Oakland. Look what happened in Baltimore. Look what happened.
I don't. It really all depends, because I mean, there was things that Clinton talked about that he got stonewalled for. There was shit that Bush talked about that he got stonewalled for. So I mean, like, most of them have tried, but if it doesn't get past Senate and Congress, it's not doing anything.
Are you in
favor of law and order? Go ahead.
Yeah, you're not supposed to.
Let him.
They're screaming at each other.
Where people get treated fairly. And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%, 15% in our administration.
All right.
It's gone up on his watch.
Went down much more than ours.
All right, we're now. Mr. President, Mr. President,
every record in
Mr. President is going to be very happy, because we're now going to talk about.
Oh, we're watching this again?
We had trouble. We're Democratic-run.
Oh, my daughter put on another Disney movie that we just watched yesterday.
And homicides in America.
It's not even like an animated movie. It's Secret Society of the Second Born Royals or some shit.
Spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth.
Yeah. Apparently, every prince and princess that's a second born develops special superpowers.
But if you look at Chicago, what's going on?
Yeah, some go evil and some join some secret society like Avengers.
And 8 died shot.
Which is funny, is they drop a lot of Avengers comments in it, which I'm assuming is only because Disney now owns them. But it's weird to see like a Disney kids movie talking about Avengers and Iron Man and shit when it's not attached to the universe.
Loses radical left supporters, and once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country, and they ran it the way he would want to run it, our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone, and you would see problems like you've never seen.
He would know a suburb unless he took a ride.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like, for most of you guys, I think I would have assumed you were more libertarian than you were anything else. Not you personally, but just like this group, the way it talks, I assume it to be libertarian, but it seems to be right-leaning.
Black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though. And in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support?
It means.
If I might.
Yeah, it's funny. Like they stay pretty much right in the middle.
And do you support the Black Lives Matter?
And I think both sides are both fucking crazy. No, you're good, man.
For community control of policing.
Look,
like, I just see how much shit and vitriol both sides spew at each other, and I'm like, yeah, no, you're both fucking nuts.
I'm totally opposed.
I'm just gonna sit over here and eat a cookie.
As a matter of fact, the only one defunding in his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down.
Just because prices are dropped.
Policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what they're talking about, Chris. That's not what he's talking about, defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law support. He has no law enforcement.
Yeah, and see, the correct way to implement that shit would be to put a non-inflation cause into any bill you pass. So we're going to, raise taxes up to 10% for large companies that make over $1 billion a year, and you're not allowed to inflate your prices to counteract that.
Another subject, which is the issue,
because it's not going to hurt them. And in the end, a company doesn't, and I mean, this is just me as a small little tiny person, a company doesn't need fucking $82 billion. There's no need for a company to have that big of a profit margin. I mean, if you can pay your employees and you can stay afloat and you have enough money to invest in research and new products, then you don't need the excess. People, in my brain, people don't need that excess either. I don't think.
Have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said,
too much?
Hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you stop the days and months of violence in Portland?
I don't hold public office now. I am a former vice president. I've made it clear. I've made it clear in my public.
Well, but I mean, are you really creating competition?
Be prosecuted.
Because in order to compete with an $8 billion company, you're going to need
excuse me, sir,
close to that.
you had never called for
The small mom and pop that comes up with an idea can't compete with a company that can steal it and produce it cheaper because they have the money to throw behind it.
In fact, take care of it if he just.
I mean, we've killed the.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Here's the
But
thing.
no,
I sent in the US
No, we can't. But we've killed innovation and small businesses
Shot him, and for 3
without major funding.
Portland wouldn't do anything. I had to send in the U.S. Marshals. They took care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, his own former spokesperson said, riots
Oh, yeah.
and chaos and violence help us
Yeah.
close. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do.
Yeah.
I think Kellyanne
Oh,
Conway.
I don't think she said
She said that.
don't.
And so here's the.
All right.
Well, here's the point.
Go
The
ahead.
point is that that's what he keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down.
I'm thinking mine is more from like a retail,
Let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this.
not cost of living,
He just
what am I
gasoline in the
functioning?
constantly.
but from
Solitary
Okay,
time.
and to
quality of life
this
standpoint.
segment, I'm going to give you a minute to answer.
Like you got somebody who opens up a bakery or a restaurant or a small food company or farms or anything like
No, you've been talking
that's not
before.
entertainment production. It's
sir,
quality of life.
if you want to switch seats.
They can't compete with that. Like a small chicken farmer can't compete with Tyson. It's not going to happen.
Okay.
But they don't want to accept the name.
They have to sell their shit
You
for
have
more.
repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing
right.
extremist groups. But are you?
We actually lose a lot of local because of companies like Walmart and shit like that, though.
Groups and to say
I mean,
that they
no.
need to stand down.
But I live in an area that's all wine and agricultural.
Of these cities, as
I'm in the middle of Oregon, so.
And as we've seen in Portland.
Sure,
Are you
I'm willing
prepared to
do that,
specifically
but
do it?
Well,
I
go
would
ahead,
say-
sir.
Actually, I'm a Californian that lives in Oregonian, or lives in Oregon.
Not from the right
So
wing.
what do you?
If
look-
look-
Yeah, no, I'm a
I'm
SoCal.
willing to do anything. I want to see
Well,
peace.
then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a name.
I don't know if I really define myself left and right.
Premises and right proud
Like, I don't.
Stand back and stand by.
Huh?
But I'll tell you what.
I said
Somebody's gotta
okay.
Do something about Antifa and the left because this is not a
His
right-wing
own,
problem.
his
This
own
is a left-wing.
FBI director
This
said,
is a left-wing problem.
white
Go ahead, sir.
supremacist. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you gotta be
not
kidding.
militia. That's what his
it's an idea.
FBI, FBI director
Gentlemen,
said.
Well, then you know what?
No,
He's
we're
wrong.
done. We're done, sir. We're moving on to the next. We're
Everybody
moving.
gives you
Bat
advice
hits
in
you
your
over the head, that's
administration.
not an idea.
Everybody in
Antifa
your
is bad.
administration tells you the truth has a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
Yeah, it's not going to be much of a debate. It's just going to be a bunch of yelling.
Dangerous,
All right,
radical
gentlemen, we're
group.
now moving on to the Trump
And
and
you ought to be
Biden
careful with
records.
them. They'll overthrow you.
When a
in 2
president,
seconds.
I'm going to ask a question. When the president,
Yeah, I think they both have that, honestly.
it is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is "Don't
A different
compare me
stat.
to the
Yeah.
Almighty, compare me to the alternative."
He may
In
be.
this case, sir, you are the alternative. Looking at both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you, why should voters elect you president over your opponent in this segment?
I think it would depend on the statistic, but yeah, I don't think he's smart enough to come up with that shit on his own that fast.
An administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite
No.
the impeachment hoax.
Nope.
And you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me,
But yeah, I'm not really
there has
side
never been an
leaning.
administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen. People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling and they were saying, it's time maybe. And then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it
Yeah.
back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including space.
No, I was
force,
alive
all of the
long enough
other
to watch the
things.
fucking
A
switch,
fixing
too.
of the
Like Democrats and Republicans used to be opposite.
under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health.
Like the Democrats used to be the fucking conservatives.
91% approval rating at the VA.
Back in like,
We take care
I
of our
don't, like back in the 80s,
rebuilt our military.
if you were a Republican, you were usually more open and more leftish.
Maybe the most important.
And if you were a Democrat, you were more like
I'll have approximately
right to the Constitution,
300
right leaning.
and Court of Appeals judges, 300, And hopefully,
And then somewhere it flip-flopped, like right before Clinton, it flip-flopped because he came out as a Democrat and then was like in touch with the kids and hung out at high schools and did other weird, creepy shit.
Judges, because President Obama and him left me 100.
Yeah, spoke at the X Games. He had a debate or a new televised news thing from like Berkeley College.
Openings, and if I were a member of his party, because they have a little different philosophy, I'd say if you left us 128 openings.
I mean, I typically get a fuck ton of flack for it, but maybe not for policy-wise, but as far as like social graces and acting like a president, I think Obama was probably our best one for that. I don't think we've actually had such a well-spoken president.
Elect you president as opposed to President Trump. You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Under this president, we become
and I mean
sicker, poorer, more divided, and more violent. When I was vice president,
I do hate the fact that he got fucking shafted by the Senate as often as he did, because we'll never really know if his policies actually would have been good because most of them didn't pass.
With regard to being weaker, the fact is that I've gone.
Trump is actually the only one I've seen that's flung out executive orders like every other week.
He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
Yeah, something like that.
And by the way,
and people were pissed because he was supposed to use them. Like one of his campaign things was to use it to reverse policies that Bush did with executive orders, and he never did it because he didn't want to abuse that power.
And why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
He never keeps his word.
No, I'm not asking. That was a rhetorical question.
Can you
Go
add
ahead,
back
sir.
30 seconds?
Yes, you may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
I've had a very hard time getting past his personal views and the chaos that is this country right now because of it. Like that makes it really hard.
Just since COVID, you in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking...
Oh, no, I mean, I get that.
Talk about the military,
I mean, it's not chaos in the city where I live, but I'm 45 minutes out of Portland. I mean, and we have warnings that come through. I'll have to find them, but like our community groups, we get warnings by the fucking county sheriffs that groups of armed like Proud Boys and shit are driving through our cities.
A patriot, and the people left behind there were heroes.
Really?
And I resent.
Are you talking about Hunter? Are you talking about Hunter?
I'm talking about my son, Bo Biden. You're talking about.
I don't know Bo. I know Hunter.
Yeah,
Hunter got
Bo.
thrown. Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. It wasn't dishonorably.
Cocaine use, and he didn't have a job until you became vice president. And once you became vice president, he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow.
I got to see what you're yelling at.
My son, he didn't have a job. My son, like a lot of people know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it, and I'm proud of him.
But why was he given tens of millions of dollars?
But he wasn't given tens of millions of dollars. That is totally
President
discredited.
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial subjects. Well, you know, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make a judgment call here.
Gets $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow.
Let's talk about
I think
true.
It's a terrible
That
thing.
report is totally discredited.
Romney
on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers' money. That report is.
You know, we're coming over your Facebook stream, right?
To talk about climate change. Okay.
Yeah.
In the West are raging now. They have burned millions.
Yep, I put my headset on and I could hear myself.
Displaced hundreds of thousands of people. When state officials there blame the fires on climate.
So I wonder if we're coming over your Twitch stream.
I don't think.
Because I'm assuming you're streaming on Twitch too.
Over your 4 years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What do you believe about the science of climate change, and what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
In my headset while you were live.
Clean water and air. I want beautiful, clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you
Well, you haven't said anything bad.
If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are actually very happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing well. As far as the fires are concerned, you need clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. And they're like Tinder.
Well, you haven't said anything bad.
If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint.
And the science of climate change.
I believe that we have to do everything we can to have immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion Tree Project, and it's very exciting.
Do you believe
for a lot of people.
that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions contributes to the global warming of this
I think
planet?
a lot of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. But I also think we have to do better management of our forests every year.
I mean, as far as Facebook is concerned, there's only 2 people watching, and I think it's you and me.
California's burning. If that was cleaned, if you had forest management, good forest management, you wouldn't be getting those calls.
Honestly, they don't like it. You didn't say anything wrong to me, and I'm not a Trump person, so
they maintain their forests. They manage their forests. I was with the head of a major country. It's a forest city. He said, sir, we have trees that are far more, they ignite much easier than California. There shouldn't be that problem. I spoke with the governor.
Yeah, I haven't even listened. I'm just sitting outside smoking cigarettes because they're both fucking crazy.
You can't every year have hundreds of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground. That's burning down.
I don't see anything good coming out of either one of them getting a
term.
term.
The science of climate change, why have you rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants? Why have you relaxed?
Because it was driving energy prices through the sky.
Why have you relaxed fuel economy standards that are going to create more pollution from cars?
You know, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes.
The car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car, and you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen because of the cost of the car? You would have at least double and triple the number of cars
anybody else
we
I
have
know.
the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer. It would be much cheaper by $3,500.
In the case of California, they've simply ignored.
No, but you would take a lot of cars off the market because people would be able to afford a car.
I figured it was going to be a shit show, honestly. Which it has been.
We're going to see how that turns out. But a lot of people agree with me. Many people.
I don't think you're going to have any discussions on policy or anything that anybody's going to get a word in on what their views are, because they're just going to talk over each other.
And I'm okay with electric cars, too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars. But what they've done in California is just crazy.
Right. Vice President Biden, I'd like you to respond to the president's climate change.
Yeah, typically as a middle ground, I get hated on the most.
About a concern. You proposed $2 trillion in green jobs. You talk about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost
most of the people I know that identify as liberal are in the middle ground too.
Number two, if in fact when during
the problem is, as a media,
Recovery Act, I was in charge, able to bring down the cost of renewable energy to cheaper than or as cheap
I said the media though is not. It's either far right or far left.
Nobody's going to build another.
So either side is getting force-fed bullshit, and neither one of them actually pays attention.
They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that we are able to take the federal fleet and turn it into a fleet that's run on their electric vehicles. Making sure that we can do that, we're going to put 500,000 charging stations in all of the highways that we're going to be building in the future. We're going to build an economy that, in fact, is going to provide for the ability us to take 4 million buildings and make sure
that they can jump off. We can always talk about this when you're off stream.
In a way that, in fact, they'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs.
Yeah, I'm actually shocked Facebook didn't jump on people that were trying to live stream it.
In terms of energy production by 2035, not only not costing people jobs, creating jobs, creating millions of good-paying jobs, not $15
They like to ban pretty much anything political that they don't like.
by having a new infrastructure that, in fact, is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord. I will join the Paris Accord because with us out of it, look what's happening. It's all falling apart. And talk about someone who has no relationship to
all I ever
with
get
foreign
on my
policy.
newsfeed is
Brazil,
Trump.
the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down.
I don't even fucking look at
More
Facebook
carbon
anymore
is
because I'm sick of
absorbed
all the
in
politics.
that rainforest and every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States. Instead of doing something about that, I would
It's
be
still on
gathering
mine
up
just
and
for all the
making
gaming
sure we
shit.